neuroscience has been saying is that conscious mind only makes up around 5% of mind. Subconscious mind makes up 95% of mind. So when there's conflict
Mhm.
between the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. That's why a lot of this stuff that we deal with in life doesn't have to make any sense. And a lot of times we try to find that logical connection or analyze it to find the logical conclusion on how to heal. And it's like, but it may not
No,
be logical.
right.
It may be the hurt and pain of a
Yeah,
child that never got
yeah.
resolved.
Craig Merriweather spent decades struggling with depression, anxiety, and eventually a bipolar 2 diagnosis before discovering that healing began by understanding the subconscious mind and nervous system underneath the surface of his experiences. In this conversation, we explore hypnotherapy, NLP, past life regression, and how unresolved emotional experiences may continue shaping our lives in ways most people never realize. Welcome, Craig. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Caroline. I really appreciate you inviting me. It's going to be a fun conversation. I mean, I know we've got some heavy stuff to talk about, but
Sure. That's that's nothing new. It's heavy and light at the same time. Okay. We'll go with that one. Okay, so can you go a little deeper into what you've lived through and how that experience shaped the work or perspective you bring into the world today?
sure. Yeah, there's a little correction I need to make. I didn't realize there's a autocorrection when I wrote out my biography for podcasts, and I didn't notice it for like a week. And I don't have bipolar 2, I have bipolar 1. And
Okay, the difference because I have
yeah,
no
yeah.
idea what the difference is. Okay.
And bipolar 2, that's kind of the famous one, what used to be called manic depressive
Okay.
syndrome or disorder. And because there's two poles, bipolar, there's two poles. There's the depressive pole when people are just struggling heavy depression. Then there's the manic phase, and when people are in that blissful, uh, extraordinarily happy
Mhm.
phase, and they make a really unhealthy, bad choices in terms of their lives because they're going for instant gratification to get even that bigger blissful high.
Okay.
And in some cases, it gets so bad that um, have to be institutionalized, hospitalized for a little bit, and heavily medicated. And so
Wow.
there's, of course, different forms of, but if it gets too much, they can actually have almost schizophrenic like issues
I was just
and
going to ask that. Okay.
hospitalized. So that's the manic depressive bipolar 2. What I have is bipolar 1. I got diagnosed with that when I was 50. And the two poles are still there. There's depression, but the other pole is anxiety. And
Mm.
vacillate instead of vacillating between happiness and depression, you vacillate between depression and anxiety. And that's what I started struggling with when I was a teenager. And it's back in the 1980s. And of course, there's no internet back then. There's no SSRI drugs like Prozac or anything like that.
Mhm.
Talk therapists you could find in the yellow pages in the phone book, or
Stop. You're dating us now. Cut it out.
whatever book you could find at the library.
Right.
Certainly not going to ask your friends at lunch in high school what therapist they're going to if they have any
Probably
recommendations.
not.
And
Yeah.
so I just struggle with that, and I just kind of assume maybe that's the way uh, things were going to be. But in the 1990s, it's kind of second resurgence or maybe third resurgence of the personal development movement
Mhm.
rolling with Tony Robbins becoming super huge, Oprah becoming super huge, and the internet started dripping out with our 14.4 modems and 12 hours to download a picture. Discussions opened up because of Prozac started coming out, and so you could actually talk about this stuff. And so
Okay.
kind of
Yeah.
this kind of uh, connection of all these different information points, if you will, between the personal growth and the self help movement and the internet being out there. You can gain even more information now. it was okay to talk about depression. People were asking about Prozac, and you realize you weren't the only one that struggled with this. And so one of the things that people would talk about in like in articles and magazines or in books or these new things called blog posts that they'd have the 5 things you could do to change your life. And one of them was always hypnotherapy.
Mm.
And I, after, a lot of research and kind of sit with that, I thought, well, all these people that I follow, in a sense, read their books and been following for a long time, they were talking about this way of tapping into the power of the subconscious mind. And so I just started working with somebody and did some great healing work. And it's kind of one of those, I'm trying to, squish 40 years into 3 or 4 minutes.
I feel your
But
pain. I understand
yeah,
completely.
and I started in, you know, with some friends in about 2010. We decided we wanted to do something with our lives to help people, help change the
Yeah.
world. And all what did I know but depression? So well, maybe I could go out there and be an advocate for help and people seeking guidance with this kind of stuff. And so I wrote a book that actually was in a contest with Hay House way back in the day. Actually, it was a hierophant
Wow.
print,
Okay.
and I got to like second place and didn't get the book published from them, but the book got out there, and I did I got into this other book called Pearls of Wisdom with Jack Canfield and Marcy Shimoff and Janet Atwood and a bunch of other people, most of who were in the contest.
Yeah. Okay.
And we we started doing promotion for that, and I did this telesummit. That telesummit led to a podcast that I did back in 2012, and has some extraordinary people on there, and that led to what else could I do, and started training to become a hypnotherapist. And now I'm talking to you.
Forward.
Yeah,
Long
fast
story
forward.
short.
That's 4
Yeah,
years, 4 years and
exactly,
5 years.
exactly. That's a really cool experience because I have talked to people who are part of, Hay House, actually work for Hay House, not somebody with it, like Wayne Dyer or whoever, but that's interesting. I love hearing stories like that because I grew up with well, not grew up, I followed that when I was going through my own healing journey, and Hay House is a big deal, as for most people, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah.
But from your story, I want to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, I'm going to assume, taking a chance here, I'm going to assume that you are an empath or highly sensitive person.
Yeah, to a certain extent, that is true. Yeah. Yeah, I got all
Okay.
how to deal with being an empath books right over here on the shelf.
So there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I am
Jubal
both.
Orloff, Rose Tree, I got all those books.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm both. And when I did my highly sensitive test on, I forget the name of the woman who did Dr. Was it Aaron? No, that's a brain doctor. I can't remember. There's a test that you can take to see how highly sensitive you are.
Oh,
And I
yeah?
took
Okay.
the yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hsperson.com. If you're ever interested at this point. But she has this breakdown of all the traits of a highly sensitive person, and it's like 27 traits, and when I took the test I ended up with 26 of them, and I was like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
that explains a lot for me. So I never like I hear you talking about the bipolar one with the depression and anxiety, and I've had that my whole life. And what's interesting to me is that when I started doing the research on the empath HSP part, I never got in that direction. I just find that interesting. And um, I don't know what the difference is. I wouldn't even know how to begin to explain what that is or why. I have a hard time with diagnoses because I think a lot of things that are diagnosed are trauma. And luckily they're moving in that direction and they've been doing that for a while. But yeah, it's a hard thing to work through. And then on top of it, when you're an empath or highly sensitive, the depression and the anxiety is like more overwhelming and everything just kind of takes
Yeah.
over you rather than, you know, someone who may not be. I don't know. Or is everyone who has bipolar one somewhat empathic or somewhat of an empath or highly sensitive. I have to wonder what that might look like. What do you think about that?
That would be a very fascinating research study or
Right?
dissertation
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, especially um, and it's the kind of chicken and egg thing. It's like,
Right.
is the brain more susceptible to depression and anxiety because you're highly sensitive, or the other way around, or both, or they have nothing to do with each other?
Or because you've been traumatized.
Yeah, or it could be traumatized, or it's just the way your
Mhm,
brain's wired. And the thing with that is, it would just be, well, with 8 billion people in the world, even a certain percentage are going to have these issues, but certainly they all come to it in a different way. They get to the top of the
absolutely.
mountain with being highly sensitive and being maybe dealing with depression and anxiety, but they all get to the top of the mountain of that in a different
Mhm,
ways.
mhm. Yeah,
I think that's why there are so many tools out there for
yeah.
people to deal with the issues, because yeah, you may be dealing with anxiety and depression just due to brain wiring, just the way things are in your
Mhm,
nervous system and your brain, or maybe it's because you're highly sensitive and an empath. And empathic in what way, and to what volume level are you at?
mhm.
And with so many wonderful techniques out there, I think they're out there because there's not one size fits all. And
I'm
so,
glad you said that.
yeah,
Mhm. Well, that's the
yeah,
thing. If this conversation is resonating with something in you, or if anxiety or overwhelm has been part of your experience, there's a free ebook in the description. These conversations are here to create space for truth, understanding, and a deeper relationship with your own life. It's almost like we've been programmed to think that if you're a certain way, I am an empath and this is how it works. And this is how my way of it works. And then when I try something to help with it, it doesn't work for me. So now I'm starting to look out there for all these other
yeah,
options on what to do. And that's where you said, there's a whole bunch of different ways of doing that. But I think that had to evolve because um there are so many, so many people think that it's everything is one size fits all. And I don't think that. We're individuals in respect to us, our minds, our bodies, our spirits, our energy. That's all individual to us, you know? So you can't, this thing that may work for somebody else may not work for us. So like my whole journey of healing was always like, oh, that didn't work. Throw that one away. you know, oh, this works. I'll put it in my toolbox, that kind of thing. So that's what that sounds like you're saying. I think
yeah. I
that's
mean,
your
in when working with people with hypnotherapy, there can be some very specific issues that people have, like fear of flying. But
Mhm.
the reasoning behind the fear of flying may be different. It's obviously gonna be different for various different people. And somebody, maybe they've flown for 30 years, but with some extraordinarily horrible turbulence over the Atlantic. Now they just, "You know what? I don't think I need to do that anymore." Or maybe it's because of a really terrible thing. They never even got off the runway.
Right.
Stories we've heard lately in the news. There's one person I work with, and she had never been on an airplane, never even been to an airport, but her parents lived near a really bad airplane crash, the one in San Diego in 1979, 1980. And airplane, you know, crashed into a neighborhood, and they actually lived in the neighborhood nearby. And they talked about it for, while she wasn't even born yet, but they
Mm.
talked so traumatic for
Yeah.
them and that whole situation, their neighbors and this entire neighborhood just gone. They talked about it, and so that she got her fear flying from her parents talking about this airplane crash that they weren't even on, but had saw the aftermath or a part of it in terms of being near it. And so it's the same issue, fear of flying, but you're going to come at it differently depending on what some
Exactly. Yeah.
experience is. And same with this other stuff. Yeah, it's anxiety and depression, but people are going to experience it differently, let alone different reasoning behind why they're experiencing it. Did it start because of trauma? did it, the volume now just get turned up because of trauma? Do the two have
Mm,
nothing to do with each other?
mhm, mhm.
Anger, that's due to the trauma, and the anxiety and uh, depression are just due to brain chemistry.
Right.
How that be helped? So there's with 8 billion people, there's just all sorts of different ways of people experiencing life. Like I mentioned, Jack Canfield is, a lot of those people in that book, the 30 authors in that book, Pearls of Wisdom, we all went through something. We all
Mhm.
came through it in a different way with different understanding and different wisdom around it. That's why I think a lot of these tools are so important, but that why, again, I work with people. Yeah, talk therapy is the best thing I could have done. And other people say, yeah, I've been there 2 years and, it didn't help me, or
Yeah.
EMDR or other thing.
Yeah, that's and that kind of tracks with what I because like from when I hear you talk about this, some people have this, some people can resonate with people with this, and some people have it and they don't resonate. And I feel like when you're sharing your story, that's important for me. Stories are important to a point because we can get stuck in our story, obviously, and start ruminating and create like an endless loop of trauma within the story, right? And so the story is important for to bring out to people for them to connect with you, for example, or with my story or whatever. But then, we can share what we know, like you did in Pearls of Wisdom with the other authors, but that doesn't mean that every single pearl of wisdom is going to suit the person
Right.
that is reading the book, right? And so that's where that whole thing that I mentioned a little while ago was like you take what works for you and you put it in your toolbox. And whenever the stuff comes back up again, you have that. You know what to do with it and you don't have to completely lose it because you already know one thing you can do. Like a big thing that I talk about all the time is the inner child work.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've found is a very powerful tool, and that's my first go-to, is whenever I get um anxious or sad or whatever, I'll put my hands on my heart to connect with her
Mhm.
and just close my eyes and breathe and tell her that everything's going to be okay, whether we think it is or not. That there's the NLP piece, I think, right? So, and then you kind of have to repeat that over and over and over again until it's almost like that fake it till you make it. That's what I think NLP is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I want to bring up one more thing before we start getting into the actual work and the hypnosis and hypnotherapy piece. I am a big fan of Carl Jung, and this is actually kind of leading into the work into your work anyway. But I noticed when I was researching you, I went to your website and I saw that you do something called subconscious transformation. Or you call yourself a subconscious transformation expert. And when I saw that, I'm like, that sounds pretty close to what Carl Jung is. Do you bring any of his
Sure. Yeah.
into your work?
Yeah. And all
Yeah.
of this was built on all. I mean, Sigmund Freud was a hypnotherapist, and
Okay, that's right,
there's
that's right.
from the late 1800s, hypnotherapy was actually quite popular. I mean, the whole
Uh-huh.
history of, yes, you could probably trace it back to the uh, mystery schools and sleep chambers and
Mhm. Yes, yes.
centers back in Egypt and Greece and things like that. Mesmerism that took hold of Europe, but they all kind of funneled into hypnotherapy. And one of the reasons why is due to James Esdale, who was a surgeon back in the early 1800s, and he was a surgeon in India. And of course, back then in the world, not just India, but in the world, you didn't have fancy hospitals or fancy anesthesia or anything like that. If you're having your leg amputated, you'd bite down on a stick or maybe blow to the head to knock you unconscious or something.
Right.
Well, he started learning this deep about this deep trance state, and he learned how to put people into a deep, deep, deep trance state so far into it looked like they're in a coma. So he
Mhm.
could patients, he could cut people open and take out tumors and sew them back up and deal with war wounds and injuries, all sorts of things. And so he eventually went back to England and he started talking about it and working with people with it. And another doctor, Dr. James Bard, started using this deep trance state. and wanting a word to describe it to his colleagues and to write about it, he decided to name it after the Greek god of sleep. Greek god of sleep is hypnos. And because it's like state looked like sleep. And so he said, well, let's call it hypnosis. And that's how this kind of modern era of hypnotherapy and hypnosis started. And by the late 1800s, people were using it for not just, to get people into a trance state to deal with medical issues, but also to help reprogram patterns and behaviors in the subconscious mind, called it hypnotherapy. There's two schools of hypnotherapy in Vienna. One of them, Sigmund Freud was at.
Hmm.
And the problem with that, with him anyway, was he had a speech impediment. And if you've ever done hypnotherapy, you mentioned yourself having done some hypnotherapy, you know that the hypnotherapist talks a lot during the entire thing because they're
Hmm.
guiding and facilitating. And yeah, you're having at times even a conversation back and forth about what needs to be healed. And especially if like you're doing some inner child work, you want to have that person actually talk out loud to the child and things like this. But majority of the time, the hypnotherapist is talking. If you have a speech impediment, hard to do and very
Would
difficult.
you implant the speech impediment into the person's psyche if you have a piece?
And I don't know exactly what the problem was. They also think, well, you could maybe help the speech impediment with hypnotherapy. Uh, and the other kind of issue with Freud is he didn't like the idea. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but he was frustrated that people would walk into a hypnotherapist office with a problem and walk out without the problem. He wanted to dive into the shadow and
Hmm.
understand people's minds and their motivations, the unconscious motivation to doing some of these things. And so he wanted to analyze them and figure them out, and then tell them what their problem was. And so he developed this thing, which literally is like translated as talk therapy. And he would just have the person talk about their life and what they're going through. He would analyze it, and one of the things he said about it is this was not a poor man's therapy because it was going to take hundreds of hours for Freud to figure people out. While he was doing this, while he was coming up with all these theories around analysis and talk therapy, he was doing copious amounts of cocaine and prescribing it to his patients because, hey, man, it makes it better. You could go to his office in Vienna, take a tour of Sigmund Freud's old office in Vienna if you're ever there. And there's like, little vials of pharmaceutical grade cocaine on his desk shelf. And to the point where he was probably addicted at the end. He was talking about being addicted to cocaine at the end. And he even probably OD'd somebody, uh, prescribed too much um, for body size and all that kind of stuff. So hypnotherapy has been around. It's not like a new thing that people just figured out 10 years ago. This has been going on for a long time. I mean, at least the modern day, about, you know, 150, 200 years, depending on when you start counting. Yeah, certainly Carl Jung is a big part of that in terms of the spiritual side of the work, even. Milton Erickson, whose work was a foundation of neurolinguistic programming, using language and tone and rhythm in order to help influence people to heal. And so a lot of this work, yeah, is based on some of these great people, Fitzpearls, and and so it's kind of this combination of all. I don't know that I could specifically say, oh yes, this line is specifically related to Carl Jung. I can do that with other people, like more of the more modern day people I've been working with over the years, like taking courses and conferences and things like this. I can say, oh, I certainly I see the Milton Erickson in it. If anything, I'd probably point to more Milton Erickson influence than Carl Jung in terms of that stuff. In terms of the more spiritual work, it's even probably more modern people like Dick Sutphin and Brian Weiss and Dolores Cannon and Michael Newton. But certainly his influence is the core of a lot of this work. I think that
Yeah, and
long answer to a short question.
yeah, that's that's why we're here. Uh, so, I
I
mean, I've always thought the whole thing that you just brought up with Carl Jung and his relationship with oh crap, what was his name? His buddy that they'd
Oh,
stopped being.
Freud?
Freud, yeah. I
Yeah,
always do that.
yeah,
His relationship with Freud and how they kinda ended up, and when I started reading about all of this stuff, I read some of this that you're talking about, so it's really interesting to hear you say it because, what I was reading was how that happened, how Jung separated from Freud, how he used some of Freud's stuff, and that's probably what created this, but he went into the spiritual aspect, and my healing journey personally was based off of the individuation piece of it,
yeah.
where that's I think that's a huge thing, but it almost feels like, now tell me if I'm wrong. First of all, um hang on a second. Let me I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. It's like there's something about doing hypnotherapy or hypnosis, and I'm going to ask you what the difference is in a minute, but there's something about doing that that actually opens up, I feel like from my experience, opened up a space to show who we are inside as individuals and as spirit.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
like,
it felt.
it's a lot of great different tools. Hypnotherapy in and of itself is just an umbrella term for a lot of different tools and techniques you could throw. The NLP people don't like it, but you could call it NLP hypnotherapy. And like we're just saying, there's a more Carl Jung aspects of it, more Milton Erickson aspects. There's more modern day, you know, d- Dave Eldman, and more spiritual side of this work. And that's because in and of itself, as a hypnotherapist, I'm not here to fix anybody.
Hmm.
Therapy in and of itself doesn't fix me. You fix yourself. It's like somebody's fixing
Exactly.
a car.
Yeah.
It's not the tools that are fixing the car. You are using the tools to fix the car.
Yeah.
So these are tools to use to, access parts of maybe the unconscious. And by that, I'm just, we can get more mysterious and look at the more spiritual side of this. But in terms of that, it's just this mind. And there's even this movement now or discussion happening that there is no conscious, subconscious, it's just mind. But just I think for the sake of our discussion here today, the subconscious part of mind, that's main job of that is to keep you safe and protected.
Hmm.
And it'll do that by the experiences, situations, and events of your life that you have gone through. And it sort of like keeps files on all these events, even if they happened a long time ago, maybe decades ago, maybe when you were a little kid, you're 5 years old, 3 years old, 1 years old. It's keeping these files in the top drawer of that filing cabinet in the subconscious mind because it doesn't want you to experience that again. It's not
Hmm.
against you, but its main job is for your safety and your survival and your protection, which doesn't necessarily mean your happiness and your success. It
Well, that
wants,
sounds like the ego, though. Isn't that the ego? Because you're using unconscious, but I'm also hearing ego language in there.
yeah, I try to keep it a little more simple because then we have to talk about it and then we have to talk about super
No,
ego
we
and it's,
don't. I
and then it's
know
like,
that. Yeah,
well,
you don't need to go there.
just the way I like to explain hypnotherapy. We use these various aspects of the subconscious mind because that's where a lot of the hurt and pain is being held on to and driving, momentum forward, or maybe procrastination, or maybe fear of this, or anxiety around that, or anger towards a certain situation. And a lot of this stuff is just reaction to the events happening currently in life. And they're based upon the subconscious mind trying to keep you from getting hurt again. Now, of
Hmm.
course, subconscious mind, it's running your digestive system, your immune system, and it's taking a day old baby to an adult. All these things we don't have to think about. You got to cut on a finger or
Hmm.
scrape. You don't have to think about those things. It just happens automatically. Grow your hair, grow your fingernails, all this stuff. Split cells, beats your heart. It's also holding on to habits like, uh, you
Builds
know,
lovely habits. Yes.
yeah, walk, but like things like just walking down the street, or zipping up your jacket, or tying your shoes, or riding a bicycle. Its main job is to keep you safe and protected, and it's holding on
Hmm.
to pain because it doesn't want you to experience it again. And if something triggers one of those files, you'll get a warning signal. But instead of like somebody pulling the fire alarm in a building and the sirens and lights go off, we also get a warning signal, but it's feeling state. And the feeling state of anxiety, feeling state of depression, feeling state of anger or fear, warning that there's danger in your life. And
Well,
so,
let me
mm,
interrupt you for a second because that's really interesting that I struggled with because that warning signal. is the thing that it's almost like the warning signal is, the still small voice of God, so to speak, right? It's very subtle, it's very quiet, and most people ignore the feeling that comes up. So it feels like they're connected there somehow. So when you're ignoring the
Yeah,
warning
I mean,
signal.
I think it might be some different. I'm talking about the actual anger people are experiencing, the anxiety, the fear, the sweaty palms, the upset
You're talking
stomach.
about the physical
Yeah,
aspect of it. Yeah, okay, so that's the stress response. I actually wrote that. So the reaction is the stress response, and that's what you're referring to.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And so
okay.
you get into this fight or flight, this physical response,
Mhm,
because brain chemistry starts changing and turning on the adrenaline and cortisol and the neuropeptides of fear and
gotcha.
anxiety.
Yep,
And that's all happening because of a thought, conscious or unconscious. And so the subconscious mind is this physical, very emotionalized part of mind, again, trying to keep you safe and protected. Whereas the conscious mind, that's more of the logical, analytical mind, the
mhm,
mind there to create your goals and the plans to achieve those goals and the willpower. What neuroscience is telling you, you've probably heard this, a lot of the people listening have heard this. What neuroscience has been saying is that conscious mind only makes up around 5% of mind. Subconscious mind makes up 95% of mind. So when there's conflict between the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. That's why a lot of this stuff that we deal with in life doesn't have to make any sense. And a lot of times we try to find that logical connection or analyze it to find the logical conclusion on how to heal. And it's like, but it may
no,
not be logical.
right.
It may be the hurt and pain of a
Yeah,
child that never got
yeah,
resolved.
and a huge percentage of the time, it is that. It's not logical because 'cause I've never been able to puzzle piece my way through anything
Yeah.
regarding the logical mind of whatever was going on. So I get that. I get that for
Yeah. And
sure.
so hypnotherapy, a lot of this is just following the feeling state back.
Mhm,
They start like in the first session. And generally, just overall, I see people 3 or 4 times. It's average. But, sometimes I see people 6, 7, 8 times. Sometimes I see people
mhm,
1 times, depending on what they wanna work on. But we start with that feeling state because the feeling state is connected to the brain chemistry that's changing, which is connected to the thought, conscious or unconscious. So it's a direct connection to what is happening and what
mhm.
needs to be released. And so that's what we use. We use the power of your mind, your specifically that subconscious part of mind that doesn't have much conscious awareness to it, as you know.
Right.
And so that's why this healing can happen
Yeah.
pretty deeply and pretty quickly. We don't have to spend months
Yeah.
and months getting to know
Yeah.
you. You already know you. You
Right.
have yourself figured out. It's just those files may be behind the closed door. Right. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. Or the
mm,
blockade that you put up to protect yourself or whatever that is, because that's what it felt like with me. Um, I when I did hypnosis, initially I did it a few times and it worked, and then a few years later I went back. So I'm assuming that that's mostly how people work with hypnosis with you is come back. Like they'll do their things and then something else will show up and then they'll do it again. But when I did it, I remember the hypnotist that I was working with, he was doing a timeline thing. And that was really intriguing for me because I've always been interested in going back generationally within my own life, in utero, all the whole timeline thing actually brought me back to the in utero piece.
yeah.
And it was so, so powerful for me because it was pre-verbal.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me as to how this works is the pre-verbal piece because we can still remember that under hypnosis,
Mhm.
but we act it out in life in
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, I work with people who just, you know, they can never get the job done. They get to the finish line and just they can't get the report done or the homework done, or they always need help at the very end. And you find out that they're C-section and need resolve and help them with that, or they always just choke at the end of it, and then find out the cord was wrapped around their neck as
Mm,
they're out, or things like this. Now that's more of a metaphoric and symbolic issue down the run, but that's the way the subconscious mind works. I mean, Freud said that, and Carl Jung said that, and Milton Erickson and Laura Pearl said that, is that the subconscious mind speaks to us in symbolism and metaphor and dreams and imagination.
yes. Yes.
but we can also speak back to it in
Mm.
metaphoricism. And that's why a lot of people, well, am really remembering being in utero. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What we're looking for is resolution and healing within the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind needs to heal it this way.
Mhm. Well,
So it's an interesting
it's all
conversation.
energy, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting
Okay.
conversation over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or go to a wine bar and just and
Yeah.
talk. It's fun. But at the end of the day, it's like what needs to be resolved? This anxiety, this anger, this resentment, this
Yeah.
inability to move forward because of the procrastination and fear. Okay, that's what resolved. In terms of how the subconscious mind needs to resolve it, it's like, well, I guess that's up to your subconscious mind. You're the one who's
Mhm.
feeling, so create it in the way that you need to. But after a while, after so many cases, it's sort of that thing of William James had a great quote. He's one of the kind of modern um, pioneers of modern psychotherapy. And he said, to prove that all crows are not black, you only need one white crow. And so, in and of itself, whether your specific issue, I mean, we can go to more spiritual side of things of past life regression and moving to kind of that spirit world of life between lives, and even Dolores Cannon's work of experiencing
Mhm.
planets or different realms or parallel universes or whatever, what all that was about.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, is your experience real or not? I don't know. I mean, well, I've worked with a lot of people with past life regression. In and of itself, I don't know that I could ever prove one way unless you're getting such detailed information, like the street address and the house is still there, and the thing is still underneath the floorboards that you can, that you remember putting there as a child in a past life or something.
People
Something like
do this all the time.
you
They
do
go
it all the
see
time.
a psychic and they find the thing that they put under the floorboard
Yeah, yeah.
connecting
And
with the
so in and of
psychic.
itself is like, okay, well, I think there's enough evidence to prove that it's real.
Yeah.
I think Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, proved that.
Yeah.
And so there's your white crow. How many more white crows do you need? Now, in and of itself, the past life somebody's experiencing, it's like, unless you're getting such detailed information,
Mhm.
in and of itself, I don't know. So it's more about what can you learn from that? What is your subconscious mind trying to gain in terms of healing, in terms of resolution, in terms of hurt and pain, in terms of creating new patterns, new behaviors, and more insights, understanding about you. What is your subconscious mind trying to gain from this? Maybe in a metaphoric and symbolic way, maybe by remembering a real past life. So it's more about how does this change you in the present?
Yeah, and there's another thing that just popped into my head. There's like when we talk about past lives, let's get into that now that you brought it up. When we talk about past lives, it's we talk very linearly about past lives, where a lot of the past lives that have popped up for me were all interconnected and even interconnected with this life,
Mhm.
so to speak, right? And so it's almost like our soul and our soul's growth is wrapped in all of that, and we just kind of loop through trying to figure out all of the nuances of who we are and the issues that we're having. And when we go into past life regression or whatever we're going into, and we come up with something and it's like, oh well, that fits here, and then we're looping in over here. It's so interesting. Does that sound right when I say that? I'm not okay. Okay, I'm not.
I kind of focus a lot of my work in terms of past life regression and more spiritual hypnotherapy, with Michael Newton's work, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And what he found, I mean, his story is very fascinating. He passed away in 2011, but in 1969, as a psychotherapist, he accidentally regressed somebody using hypnotherapy, wanted to regress them back to childhood to resolve some issues and some hurt and pain. But the person he was working with went all the way back to the spirit world, this where he was a full soul energy
That's
and was
cool.
incarnate here on Earth. And so Michael Newton was fascinated about this. The guy did some extraordinarily deep healing work in this one session by experiencing that. And he's wondering, well, one, was that even real? Two, can other people experience this? That was someone accidental. Could I do this on purpose? And so he started working with people, finding this protocol to help get people back in that state. And as he's working with people, people are having similar experiences to each other of soul world,
Mm,
of called a life between
mhm.
lives. And this is 1970s. So again, there's no internet, there's no WhatsApp, there's no texting each other. these people didn't know each other. They're coming from different parts of the
Right.
country, maybe
This
different
sounds
parts
like
of the
a
world.
Dolores Cannon work too, that she did the same thing, connecting people
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
well, the reason I like Michael Newton is because he did about 20 years worth of research with people. So he did all the 70s, all the 80s, and that's the first book, Journey of Souls, 1992. So he did about 20 years worth of research with people, thousands of people who were having similar experiences to each other. He then did another decade's worth of research, and with 30 years worth of research, he did the second book, Destiny of Souls. And now the Michael Newton Institute, which he founded in the early 2000s, is still around. They released a book a couple years ago, and so it's 60 years of research. And I like his methodology of going back to the soul state to create this healing, but also understanding with, again, not just one or two or three people's experience or their own experience, but tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people after 60 years,
Mm.
because he's not the only one doing it. The Michael Newton Institute has a bunch of people doing this research now. But one of the things is that we're here to learn and to grow and to develop as souls. This is like a
Right.
school. We're
Oh,
here to grow and to learn and have lessons.
yes.
And so it's not like learning mathematics, though.
Right.
When you're learning math, you just don't start writing those crazy equations on the chalkboard. You have to start with 2 plus 2 equals 4 in the first grade.
Right, right.
And then you learn subtraction. Then you go on to learn your times tables. And you learn division in high school. You're doing algebra and calculus and trigonometry. And then you're getting your bachelor's degree. Then you're getting your master's degree in mathematics. It took
Mhm.
12, 15 years to get this master's degree by building on top of each other. Maybe you go to different schools. You certainly have different teachers and maybe different classroom experiences. Certainly elementary school is not the same as high school, which is not the same as you get your bachelor's degree at one university, you get your master's degree at a different university.
Mhm, mhm.
And and if you could look at each grade as a life,
Yeah.
yeah, we're looking at something like learning about love or compassion or empathy or something, even like, let's say, wealth and abundance, something as uh, broad as wealth and abundance. It's like, well, yes, one obvious life would be a very rich person with the yacht and the private jet and the apartment over Central Park and the house in the south of France. You'd be that wealthy person with the 30 cars in your warehouse in New Jersey. And so
Mhm.
have that aspect of learning about wealth and abundance, being very wealthy and abundant. But would it not also help you understanding wealth and abundance by living in abject poverty in Calcutta? Back in the 1700s, would it not also be helpful to you to learn how to live paycheck to paycheck in the 1920s or 1930s, the Dust Bowl of 1930s? Would it also
Or
not,
2025 or
yeah,
6.
exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
would that help you to learn about being, wealth and abundance by being a serf back in the 1400s? And they don't necessarily have to go in chronological order. We could start off in 2025 and 2026 and then go back to the 1400s and then go back to the 19,
Really start.
then
Where did
go
it
back
come
to
from? Yeah,
the
yeah.
the
Mm,
1700s and
interesting.
then the 3 BC.
Right,
It
right,
doesn't
right.
necessarily have to be linear. It's not unlike a theater troupe. Like most communities have some sort of local community theater troupe, and the plays they do. The whole theme of the year may be about loss or something, you know, and each every other month they're going to do 6 or 7 plays throughout the year. They're all based around this theme of loss and redemption or something like
Mhm,
that. The first play may be some modern play that was written within the last few years, some play that was on Broadway. And they say, okay, we're going to do this play that was on Broadway a couple years ago. And it's based in 2020. It's based on that whole situation, based on 2020. So they do that play. And it's this group of 8 actors, and they hand out the script, and here's the play we're going to do. Here's how the characters grow from the first act to the third act, and here's the roles you're going to play and the costumes we're going to wear. And here's where it's going to be based in this city. And then they do this play, and then they take a break, and then they come back in March, and they say, okay, now we're going to do one. But Shakespeare had this great play about loss and redemption, and it's called Macbeth, and we're gonna do this play, and here's the
mhm,
costume we're gonna wear. In fact, we're gonna even switch it up. We're gonna be cool and hip, and we're gonna not do it in 1600s. We're gonna do it in the 1920s. But it's all gonna
mm,
be Shakespearean language, and so you mess with the time and the costumes, but everybody has different roles now. They're the same actors,
Yeah.
but then we have different roles. And then they say, okay, well, now we're going to do a Greek tragedy is going to be
Yeah.
the third play. So we're going to go back even further. Then we're going to do a play that was from the 1960s and
So
they
yeah.
around
So I
all
mean,
beating
yeah,
the
I
rainbow.
don't you wanna just I mean, this is so much intermingling with our soul within lives, within this life, within all lives. That's basically what this is. It's just it's like I use this is a hand motion that helps me to describe it. There's just so much of this going on.
Yeah.
It's not just this is what you're
Yeah.
basically saying. And
Yeah.
let's get back to the past life regression piece real quick because I'm curious of how past life regression uncovers the root of emotional, physical, or relationship or any other kind of struggles that feel like they're impossible to explain in this
Mm,
lifetime.
yeah. Well, it's not unlike, say, somebody in their 70s or 80s, and I've worked with people in their 70s who have deep grief and anger or resentment or fear or anxiety, and it's related to something that happened to them when they were 5 years old. Great abuse. They've been holding on to it for some 70 years, maybe out of protection, maybe out of just not knowing they could
What
release.
else to do? Yeah.
And so, even with the wisdom and the knowledge, the understanding of an adult, of being an elder, they're still holding on to the hurt and pain of a child. Logically, it doesn't make any sense. You should just, oh, just get over it, just get rid of it. No, but there's something that was so hurtful, so traumatic that it it had to hold on to that hurt and pain out of protection, maybe, or some other reason.
Okay.
They're allowed to release it, to let it go. With past life regression, that's the issue. Maybe there's hurt and pain. And I've worked with people who've done years and years and years of talk therapy and EMDR, and then they read Dolores Cannon, Brian Weiss or Michael Noon or my book, Past Lives Guidebook or something, and they say this feels comfortable, it feels familiar even, and I think I want to work with this, and they find out, okay, yes, there's some other issue that was unknown to the conscious mind, even to maybe the subconscious mind, but this
Mhm.
higher self, the super conscious level of mind. And you release that and let go, disconnect from that hurt and pain, not the lessons. You want to keep the lessons and the wisdom. Want to remember a hot pot on the stove burns your hand. You just don't need to keep the pain of it anymore.
Well,
And
but
so,
that's natural. The mind, the human mind actually allows for that though, because once you walk through that, it
mhm,
doesn't go back to that. It just keeps that memory in there enough where you're like, "Oh, I don't need to do that again."
yeah,
Or right.
yeah. And so, yeah, you keep the wisdom and the knowledge, the information. Now, of course, you can do past life regression just out of curiosity and insights. Like somebody who mentioned this before, just somebody interested in their genealogy or their
Mm.
ancestry. But there's that thing, it's like, well, what if you find out that there's some problems that have
You
happened
will.
in your ancestry?
Yeah,
And
you will.
yeah. And so it's like, well, what was supposed to be a fun little investigation on your
Yeah.
family comes from, and you find out maybe they're not so nice people from the past. And so now what do you do? And that's where the
Mhm.
therapy part of it comes in. And that's why we're working with somebody who knows how to help you with that. Even
Right.
even if you're just like, oh, I just want to explore uh where I come from, my different past lives, seeing how they all link up together, maybe, or just investigate your most spiritual past life or a past life where you had the most romantic encounter with your soulmate, or maybe you're skilled at something, or an athlete or
That
musician.
I'm curious. Yes,
Yeah.
the
And
skill.
there's this theory out there that it took multiple lifetimes
Mhm.
to get that skill level. You look at somebody like Yo-Yo Ma, one of the greatest cello players ever, uh, started playing violin at the age of 3, the cello at the age of 4, and is extraordinarily talented musician. And there's this theory that, well, it took him multiple lifetimes of training as a cello player to get to that level. And, and in fact, the first couple of lifetimes, he kind of sucked at it. Or like
Mhm.
Meryl Streep, how do you get to be that great of an actress? You know, or Bruce Lee, martial arts. And
Yeah.
combining these different kind of martial arts, would you not have to be a master at all these different styles of martial arts? And he did that in his, teenage years and 20s, became a master of all these, or did it took multiple lifetimes? And then in the
Well,
50s, 60s, as he grows into becoming a master at a very young age.
Mhm, mhm.
It took him multiple lifetimes in
That's interesting.
different
Yeah,
cultures even, uh,
yeah.
to learn this stuff. And so, you might want just want to see, maybe you're great at a great musician or great at mathematics or science or something. And maybe you're an empath. Is this have anything to do with the past life? Go back to past life that is influencing my experience as an empath.
Right. So many questions, so many
Yeah, so
questions.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you could put it in so many different ways. I mean, if you just want, I just want to get a look at a handful of different past lives, 3 or 4 or 5 different past lives, just to see if there's a connection, or you want to dive in deep into one specific past life.
Well, let me okay, we were with that in mind and with what we were talking earlier about the soul growth piece of it. What actually happens in between? Like this just poked in. What happens in the life between lives, like wherever we go in between all this, the spirit world, whatever you want to call it? And why is that space so important for healing and soul growth? But because it feels to me like it's connecting all of this
Yeah,
together. So
yeah.
please
Well,
go a little deep.
it's not unlike somebody playing a video game, and they're maybe learning and growing, and they have their life, and they decide, okay, it's time to you know get with my friends and go on this adventure. And they pick the person they want to be in the time, the game, the adventure they want to go on, and who's going to play what role. And then they play this game and they learn and they grow and they level up and they get the treasure and they whatever wisdom they need. And then they take a break. Maybe not the greatest analogy in the world, but sort of like in soul life when you return to being this in the soul state in the spirit world, because in the Michael Newton protocol is that you do a past life first because
Hmm.
you want the experience of the soul leaving the body at the end of that life. And we'll get to the end of that life. And that's very important in past life regression therapy in terms of getting to those last moments in that life. Because what are the thoughts? What are the emotions? What are the feelings? Or in that past life, is life fair or unfair? Is love easy or hard? Is money easy to come by or is it very difficult? And are there emotions? Or is there feelings of wanting revenge? Are you going to, is there feelings of coming back and wanting to make things right? What are those last thoughts and feelings in that life? And then transitioning out of that body to becoming pure spirit form. And while we're doing this work, we're having a conversation.
Hmm.
Just like if I was to ask somebody about their memories of high school. And it's like, it's not time travel. It's not Marty McFly and Back to the Future. You're not traveling in time.
Oh,
It's
come
just,
on.
yeah, just a memory of it. Just like
Yeah.
in high school, if I was to have somebody, "Oh, just close your eyes and tell me about high school. Is it big school, middle-sized school, small school? Tell me about prom. Did you go to prom? What did you wear? What was the music? What was the theme? Did you do sports or did you do music or theater or were you a science kid or did you smoke cigarettes behind the gym? What was your experience?" And then you describe your experience.
Mhm.
And okay, well, now let's go to your earliest memory. We're just accessing memories. Well, all we're doing is going a little bit further, deeper into the pool, deeper side of the pool, and we're accessing memories of a past life. And you're having this conversation. Now we're doing group work. Of course, that's going to be a more generalized and a solo experience that you can maybe describe afterwards. But in terms of one-on-one work, you're narrating your experience, one for the recording, because you want to listen to it and we'll get a get a transcription of it so you can even have an easier time of going through it. Uh, but it's also to help me facilitate. So I'm listening and your experience as a past life. It's like, oh, you just mentioned something that seems to connect with your current life about
Yeah.
fear, about anxiety, or about love, or about
Yeah.
money. And as you move in that spirit world or into spirit energy, as that soul state, you move up into that soul world. And who greets you there? Does your spirit guide greet you there? Is it some other spirit beings? Is it your soul family? And how do they appear to you? Because a lot of that a lot of what's happening, I think, and the way I like to describe it is sort of like this 5D digital information being processed by this 3D analog brain. And so somebody may say, "Oh, yeah, well, who greets you at the gateway to spirit world? Was it like kind of the pearly gate things, was clouds and angels with hearts?" And it's like, "Oh, my grandmother's here to greet me." Yeah, my grandmother was my spirit guide. It's like, I'm guessing in spirit world, we don't have human-like bodies, but it's like
The
brain, the mind
energy.
needs to translate this as,
Yeah.
well, let's just, visualize this person as a human body so you can get the information you need symbolically, metaphorically.
Well,
It's
they talk about in NDEs, near death experiences, they talk about how like people who have experienced a certain religion or they believe in Jesus or they believe in Buddha or they believe in Allah, when they get to their location at the pearly white gates, whatever that is,
yeah.
that's who they're going to see. So the memory actually plays a part, it sounds like to me, in that process of being
Yeah,
there.
it's certainly memory, but I think my own humble, opinion of working with people over the years and just my own research and study and my fascination, if you're brought up in a certain religion or you convert or you study a certain philosophy or theology, yeah, that symbolic and metaphoric way of viewing life, the universe, and everything is going to influence the symbolism and how you experience that. Because again, it's this 5D digital information being processed by this 3D analog brain. So it's going to have to make a combination. It's like, well, it's the energy of God in the universe. Well, let's just make it Jesus. Let's just make it Mary Magdalene. Let's make it your grandmother. So let's,
Yeah.
make it a way
And
that
they'll
you,
understand. So you feel safe. So you feel
yeah,
connected. That's what we're
yeah. If
doing
you
here.
didn't see, that movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway,
Rob, I think so, but I don't remember.
different planets. Well, and if anybody, I'm not going to give anything away. I mean, it's a great movie, but it's also been like 15 years or 20 years or something. So if you haven't seen it yet, but it's a great, great, great movie. And the idea is the Earth is dying. They have to go find another planet to live on. So they
Mm,
these different planets. But at the end, and not to like give anything away, but uh,
I'll just give it
yeah,
away.
he's stuck in at the end. He's stuck in the 5D world.
Mm,
And it makes sense because he did all the science around this really beautiful, wonderful movie scientifically even. But he's stuck in the 5D world and he has to communicate with the 3D world of Earth. Hence the books off the bookshelf. You saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The books off the bookshelf, the dust in the light, the Morse code on the watch. He can't just pick up a phone and call. He can't send a
yeah.
fax. Can't send a text or WhatsApp or anything or any email. He has to find a different way of communicating from the 5D world to the 3D world. Hence all the weird things that happen in the movie. So I think it's very similar to that, and also not unlike that story about the five blind men and the elephant. And one blind man has a snake, one blind man has a piece of rope, one blind man has a tree trunk.
Oh, okay.
And
Hmm.
they're just getting a little part of the
Hmm.
situation. Or if people are familiar with that TV show, The Good Place, with Ted Danson and Kristen Bell, great, great show. That was another one
Yeah.
a few times. I love that show. And one part of it was they were trying to get Michael, Ted Danson's character, to explain the afterworld, the afterlife, and
Hmm.
which got it right. And he said, well, they all get about 10-15% right. And I know that's out there, but the show was pretty funny about it, except
Yeah.
Doug Forsett, who took acid in 1980s and got 96% right.
There's that.
We all get like 10-15% of it.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what it's like when people go out there and say, this is the way it is, or I've channeled something, or it's like, I think you have a part of the puzzle, but I don't
Hmm.
think you have the entirety. I don't think we can understand the entirety of the puzzle. I think
Mm-mm.
we're all in the second grade and third grade, and we can't understand master's degree level mathematics. We're still trying to figure out our times tables. And so,
Right? Well, even the Native Americans call it the great mystery. So
yeah, yeah.
if it's claimed to be a great mystery, then there's no way that any one human being can really understand. Well, depending on the human being that you are when you're a human being, can really understand, like you're saying, of what that is. So,
Yeah, and that's
and
what
it's
that great quote by, and I forget the guy's name. You can look it up on the internet, the Google machine. Um, it was in the late 1970s. The tour manager for AC/DC,
oh
got
wow.
highly religious on tour and became a devout Christian on tour. and he kind of moved into a more spiritual, religious life. But one of the things he said was that God is the name we give the blanket which we put over the mystery to give it form. And so,
It's
I
profound.
yeah, yeah, and I just think there's more mystery to it than we can ever understand. And so, if you have this experience of a past life, if you have an experience of soul state, of soul world, I think it's true. I think there's enough evidence out there, and that's again what my whole book, Past Lives Guidebook, is about: is the science behind it, and all done in a fun way. But looking at remote viewing, looking at the work of Michael Newton and Dolores Cannon and Brian Weiss, and looking at consciousness and time and space and theories around computer simulation, all multiverse and holographic universe, and all these. I mean, there's people way smarter than me who argue about uh, the the construction of reality. If it's
Well,
simulation, if it's a holographic universe, if it's the multiverse.
yeah, there's a lot of that stuff going on out there right now. And here's the thing that hit me when you said that was, um, from my experience, I still, after 40 years of doing my work on myself, healing and all the rest of the stuff, I love woo woo.
Mhm.
I love getting into that kind of thing. And then I also love being grounded and all. So I'm like watching, I'm analyzing, I'm doing all that stuff, watching how all this stuff works. And I have been for my entire life, why is it that I can't get that experience that you're talking about that these people have gotten, right?
Yeah.
My experience, which I've literally found out within the last month, because and I believe that if you're going to talk, or I'm going to talk about the clairs, like clair audience and clairvoyance and clairsentience, I feel like, and me by even saying that, I don't get visual anything. I don't jump timelines. I don't, well, I might, but I don't recognize it as that. But what I do get is this immense um, feeling of peace and just vibration and that kind of thing when I'm feeling it now as I'm talking about it, which is weird. I usually don't do that like publicly. I usually only do it when I'm doing my own stuff, but I feel this immense feeling of just like my body's buzzing or the peacefulness or whatever. And then I kind of go into this zone and I just breathe. And that's all that is for me. But it seems like, or the way you describe it, it feels the same. I just don't get to see what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, my own 2 cents about that, because 'cause I'm very, very very similar. So another quick little, uh, biography of, Craig Merriweather is I was born and raised in the Episcopal Church, Protestant Church
Okay.
of England, and just because it's the
Mm,
church up the street. I'm sure if it was Methodist or Lutheran, or that would be the church I went to. And that's what you did in the 60s and 70s. I was born in 67, lived in San Diego, California, and just the church that was, 5 blocks away, so we could walk to church. And that's what you did. That's where your friends were. That's the social thing you did.
right.
And the Episcopal Church, it's kind of Catholicism light, basically. It has the candles and the robes and procession and Eucharist, and it's a very ritualistic and ceremonial uh, service, and I liked it very much. I liked the candles and the robes. Is um, kind of fun as a kid, and there'd be incense sometimes until people
Mm.
started complaining about that. But uh,
Okay.
from 6th grade to 12th grade, I went to a Baptist school. And it's not that my parents were religious. It was just like you went to church. And
Hmm.
private school was supposed to be better than public school. And the private school was run by the Baptist people. And so I was heavily indoctrinated, if that's the right,
Mm.
because that was my life, was, religious school, Monday through Friday, summer school things, because there's nothing to do in the summer. We don't have the internet or video games or anything like that. So I was like, well, there's summer school stuff or theater camp or sports or whatever.
Well,
And
God
so,
forbid you go out into nature or anything. I mean, come on.
well, in terms of San Diego, I mean, we're in suburbia and there's was nature. It
Well,
was in
that's
Lake Murray,
true.
my parents' house. I'd disappear into the Vietnam jungles of Lake Murray and disappear for that time. My mom had no idea where I was.
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's also
So,
like, okay,
yeah.
there's 4 hours. What are you going to do with the other 4 hours? And so there was this, stuff to do, but it was all kind of church related. And so there's Bible class and chapel during school. And then my friends went to church. So there's all these church youth group activities.
Right.
And, what I found when dealing with the depression and anxiety is that when I did occasionally, so it was like 45% depression, 45% anxiety, but I'd hit these, what I would call manic states, states of happiness and joy. And they're all related to religious experiences,
Mm,
a retreat or going to summer camp or whatever. And so I'd hit these occasional, maybe once a year or every other year. And so of bliss and happiness, and equated to that mountaintop high that you get at a religious retreat or something. I even joined the charismatic movement as a teenager, because I wanted that happiness. Life was
mhm,
depression, anxiety. That was like, okay, well, I equated spirituality and religion with that high, and so I spent a lot of time investigating that, not only personal growth and self help in the '90s, but various, you know, spiritualities and
mhm,
philosophies. And so what I found as I'm doing this, as I work with other people and do classes and workshops and retreats and things and ceremony with other people, is that I wasn't getting that stuff either. I wasn't seeing the beings. I didn't hear the trumpets. I didn't see angels with wings. Other people did, and I was quite jealous of that. It was a
yeah.
bummer.
It's like,
And
I've been working all this time on my religious stuff, and now I'm not even getting any of that. What is
well,
this? I don't
and
think you're telling me the truth.
yeah, and to a certain extent, you just think you're broken and you're
Right,
not, and
right.
you're,
That
you're
makes
not
sense.
allowed and you're not worthy of that. And what I've come to, as I learn and grow and develop as a person, as a soul, as a spirit, and all my research and the things I've learned. Again, I wasn't diagnosed as bipolar 1 until 50. I was, I'm
Mhm,
59 here in a little bit. And so what I've come to, yeah, I'm not clear. I don't have, because you go to those mind, body, spirit expos and things, and all these people are like, they're psychic and they can read your energy, and they can give you messages from your guide and things like that. And assuming that at least some of them are for real, uh, it's like, well, why can't I do that? Why don't I get
mhm,
the voice or the message or the colorful angel with wings and fire and all that, trumpets and things like this? And because what I have is more like the claircognizant, where I can just download. It's like, I need information, and then it's like, well, you need to go down to that. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, well, that was that was unspectacular.
it's exciting. Thanks.
And when I kinda come to the conclusion is like, oh, this is the way I'm supposed to do it this time.
Yeah,
And it doesn't
yeah,
mean in and of itself, and I don't mean this in a bad way. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, good or bad. I'm just saying this is my experience this time. Somebody else has that experience of clairvoyance or taps into that. um, it doesn't mean they're like, quote unquote, better than you or higher than you.
exactly.
This is your experience. And it's sort of like that idea of going out into nature, and you can glamp
Mhm,
and have a tent with a soft bed and an espresso maker and all this, or you can go out into nature with a piece of rope and a knife and learn how to survive. Both are legitimate ways of experiencing nature.
mhm, mhm.
And so it
Yeah,
doesn't mean one's good or bad, or maybe, somebody's here for more of an R&R experience rather than a learning experience. They just want to go on vacation and live by
right.
the, or maybe they're new at it, and they need the colors and the sounds and the things. And or, maybe this is
Mhm.
their first or second life or their
Yeah,
10th, and where somebody else is on their 1,000th life. And this time you're going to do it without, sort of like, martial arts training. Somebody starting off in martial arts training is going to be trained differently to somebody getting their 10th degree black belt,
right.
you know? And
Yeah,
so,
yeah, that makes
and so
sense.
again, it's not good or bad. It's like, yeah, you're learning, you're growing, you're developing. So yeah, colors and
Right.
trumpets and winged angels.
It's all just different for, I mean, basically what you're saying, it's all just different for everybody, right?
Yeah, it's
So
like it's your experience that you're having. It doesn't mean it's wrong. In fact,
right.
it just may indicate you're getting your master's degree in this particular topic, where
And you
somebody
don't need
else will say,
all that foo-foo stuff.
yeah, well,
That's
yeah,
it.
and maybe next time you do have the foo-foo stuff,
And
you
maybe
know?
you do, and maybe you don't have to come back. Who knows? There's
You
so
know,
many
okay,
questions
well,
and
you
there's
don't
so many answers.
yeah,
Well,
and I think
Craig,
that's the thing, it's like at the end of it, it's like, well, we're only seeing 15, 10%, so I it's
right.
like the
Yeah,
experience you're having
nobody
is what you
knows.
be having, so
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So, Craig, I'm gonna ask you some questions that I ask all my guests now. If you could offer one piece of advice to someone just starting to notice they need something to change in their life or shift, what would that be from your own experience?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I kinda sorta touched on it a tiny little bit, but it's what you practice, you get better at.
Mm,
And that is literally wiring your brain. That's how we learn how to walk as a child, how to tie our shoes, how to zip up a jacket, how to ride a bicycle. If you're playing a musical instrument or learning dance or learning martial arts, what you practice, you get better at because it literally wires it into the brain in terms of brain cells connecting together. Brain
mhm,
wants fast, efficient communication. And so when it sees brain cells firing at the same time, like learning to walk, there's a lot of probably hundreds upon hundreds of millions of neurons firing to walk, lifting up your foot, putting it down, right, and the balance and the momentum and the all this stuff is happening within the brain, and all those uh, brain cells will connect together. I mean, watch a 1-year old learning to walk. It's very clunky and
mhm,
over and okay. Once those neurons start to link together, it becomes really fast, really quick. Well, what if you're practicing anxiety? Or what if you're practicing fear? What if you're practicing anger?
mhm,
Practice you get better at. And so that's where a lot of this work of therapeutic hypnosis comes in terms of hypnosis being that brainwave state, basically. The alpha, theta, delta brainwave states are collectively known as the hypnagogic trance state. Beta, in that being in the conscious, being consciously aware of the present moment, task at hand, focused in the present moment. That's the beta brain state, firing about 18, 20 cycles per second, and how fast your brain
mhm.
you move into that daydreamy state, bored at a meeting or at work, driving down the street. You don't remember the last minute or two because you're
Yeah. No,
else.
that never happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're moving down to the alpha brainwave state. Maybe you're in that daydreamy or not, the hazy state, not really awake, not really asleep. You're in the theta brainwave states, going to
Mm,
12 and then to 6, and then maybe you're asleep in the delta. We move in and out of the state all day long. We're always getting bored at
right.
work, bored at a class in high school, bored watching our TV show, you're bored standing in line at the store. Our mind drifts off. You just moved into the hypnagogic trance state. It's a very natural state. So that's hypnosis,
Mhm,
named after the Greek god of sleep, this trancy state that we move into multiple times a day. That's why it's so easy to get into the state. And even if people have experienced, went to a hypnotherapist, well, I couldn't be hypnotized and I just can't do this work. And I read a study that says, 20% of people can't do, no, you can't. You could in that situation. That's what lets you know you have control because you
mhm.
didn't allow yourself to move into that state because you didn't feel comfortable. You
Right.
didn't feel comfortable with that person. You didn't feel comfortable with the office or the Zoom call where so much of this work is happening nowadays. You maybe consciously or subconsciously felt it wasn't the right time for the healing.
Mhm.
You just shut
Well,
it
there's a
down.
lot of factors. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
That
factors, it sounds.
you go into hypnosis multiple times a day, every day of your life, the alpha
Right.
brainwave state. So you can do it. It's just you took control and didn't feel comfortable maybe in that situation. Therefore, you didn't.
Right,
And
right, right. Yeah.
suppose this isn't taking away control; it's giving you back control. So hypnosis is just basically the physical state of moving into that relaxed, trancy state of the alpha theta brainwave state. Therapeutic hypnosis is using these tools and techniques to help create healing and resolution and more confidence and strength and power and becoming the person you want.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so when you release and let go of that hurt and pain, you then want to practice the person you want to be. You want more confidence, then you need to practice confidence. You want
Right.
more strength and power, you want more joy and you might have to practice joy and happiness. Just because you get rid of the hurt and the pain and the anxiety doesn't mean all of a sudden you're filled up with joy and happiness.
Yeah,
Or
right.
the
Yeah.
programming's there, the linkage is there, but maybe you want to practice. It's like you're practicing somebody practices the piano. It's like, well, you're going to get really good at the piano if you're practicing the piano every day. Well, if you practice happiness, peace, and calm every day, so anyway, again, probably a long answer to a short question, but I would say
Well,
just what you
yeah.
practice, you get better at. So who do you want to be and what are you practicing every day? Does it match who you want to be? Because if somebody, uh, wants to learn martial arts, but they practice the piano every day, and after a month, hey, how's martial arts going? You're getting up to your yellow belt or whatever. They're like, no, no, I'm practicing piano. It's like, well, why? I thought you wanted to learn martial arts.
Oh, they're pianists now.
Yeah, but it's like, this is what I know how to do and it's easy. And
Mhm,
my mom made me learn piano. And so I just do
mhm.
piano. Yeah, but you're not practicing what you want.
Yeah,
So, you know,
exactly,
cut that
exactly.
connection and chords to, your mom wanting you to be a piano player and start practicing martial arts.
So, how would you define awakening?
Awakening. Awakening is understanding there's more to this than the reality you're experiencing right now of work and bills and things, and that there's a certain programming that happened due to the events, circumstances, and events of your life. Maybe they're happy, joyful events. Maybe they're more traumatic, and they influence you. And so when you awaken to that, you realize you have control over it, and that may need some healing work done in some form or another. But you are in control of this, and when you become aware, you realize you have that control and you can take back control.
That's it. I love that. I love hearing when people say the word aware because that's a big thing. So, what do you believe soul divinity is?
Oh, um, in terms of soul divinity, I think, well, it's very much the work of Michael Newton and what he explored with the various people over the Michael Newton Institute of 60 years is that we have connection to that part of soul that's still up there in the life between lives, the soul world. And it's that soul divinity that we could connect with because part of our soul energy is still there. And if we clean up the connections and maybe turn up the volume knob a little bit, we can connect with that part of ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, easy question. How can people get in touch with you?
The best way is through the websites. If you're interested in more of the spiritual work, there's Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy. And in the more clinical work of hypnotherapy, you can look at either craigmerriweather.com. And I know Merriweather has a lot of different spellings, so you can just go to releasethepast.com and I'll get you there.
Okay. All right, perfect. And is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Well, just that you have if this interests you, if you're still listening to this conversation, you're still with us, something's resonating with you. So you have the ability to take back control. And a lot of it, of course, can may be due to trauma, known or unknown, that you experience. It may just be the way you grew up and the household you were in. Uh, but you have control over that. You can allow yourself to release and let go of any sort of hurt and pain. Release the past if you need to. It may just be lessons you never learned about confidence or being strong and empowered or standing in the power of your own strength. You're allowed to create that person. You're creating the person you are every day. So take control. Hypnotherapy, these techniques and tools can help you do that.
That's cool. I like that. So, Craig, thank you so much for
Yeah,
being
you're
here
welcome.
and sharing this part of your journey with us today. Yeah, that was great. And to the audience, thank you for being here with us on Awakening Soul Divinity. And if this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe, share it with somebody who may need it, or leave a comment below. Every conversation here is an invitation to meet you where you are and to remember that you're not alone. Until next time, welcome home. Thank you for being here. Click on one of the videos below to keep going on your healing journey. And don't forget to subscribe.